Sounds great. I'll have to drive over here and say got it. Okay, great. Hi, everybody. So I know everyone on this except Rick. I know we've been on calls before. I apologize. I can't remember how we know each other. And then David, you're new to me. I'm Lauren Gwynn. I'm with Oregon State University, and I co-created this policy working group with a couple folks for OCFSN back in 2017. And I am OSU has a backbone relationship with OCFSN. So David and Rick, where are you all from?
So I'm in Coos Bay. I own Blue Ridge Strategies, and I work with rural development initiatives right now, and also Oregon Coast Visitors Association, who are both interested in the Farm Bill and the actions that are happening here. So I'm trying to come up to speed as fast as I can, and this is an area that OCFA turned me on to, and it's been interesting the one or two meetings I've been on so far.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, David?
Hey everyone, it's me, Lauren. David Whelan, CM Grants. I'm with Partners for Country Level. Some of our folks that participate in the past, Norway. I work mostly on our.
Yeah, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Did you say Partners for Hunger-Free Oregon?
Yeah.
I think your mic is a little warbly.
Yeah, I'm in a loud coffee shop, so it's
totally.
We
hear you.
Sorry, everyone, but
no, it's totally okay.
I'll be listening.
Awesome. And Mackenzie, are you with Oregon Food Bank?
Yes, and I came in a little bit late, so I don't know if we're
you're
just
good.
at intros, but yes, I'm with Oregon Food Bank.
Yeah, we're just getting going. And Rashay, you're with Growing Gardens?
Yes, that's correct.
Wonderful. Okay, great. So I'm doing intros that way, just so I understand. So I haven't been on all of these calls the way I used to always, and we're really getting going again. This call is about the community food systems at the legislature work that we do together through OCFSN, which is focused on the Oregon legislature. It's really about state legislative policy. There are other things that OCFSN members do together related to other policy arenas. And when I mean, I should clarify, public policy. There's lots of private policy that folks work on. There's so many different parts of policy. But what we have found over the years is that we have a really good sweet spot because we are a state level network that working together at the state legislature, and sort of it includes the things that happen afterwards with things that get passed, that is a real sweet spot for OCFSN members and our partner organizations to work together. And so this is a meeting. So Rick, you mentioned Farm Bill. I've been super impressed with the webinar series that Andrew and others have put together related to Farm Bill at the federal level. And that is the great thing that OCFSN members can do together, is to choose an area of public policy that they're interested in and do learning together and bring in folks. Yes, and Mackenzie and Jen. And we can do that with other areas that members want to do. But this meeting in particular, we are focusing on our community food systems at the legislature, which 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 20, it'll be our 6th year in 2024.
And Oregon Coast Visitors Association also is interested in that. We're doing a lot of work with the Oregon legislature around local seafood and local food production. So I might have had my notes missed. I had it large like farm, and so
you're good. You're good.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much. Thanks for everyone for pinging in. So Andrew, do you think with this group, do they all know each other, or should we do a quick round of introductions?
Yeah, it would, I think, make quick sense. I think there's some new folks here.
Great.
Just name and pronouns and organization, I think, is enough for now. And we'll get into the kind of member updates and legislative priorities for the coming session. So we can save that. I can start. My name is Andrew. I work for Oregon Community Food Systems Network as the Farming for the Future Working Group Coordinator, he, him pronouns, and I am supporting Lauren in this group and kind of holding this space here as we move into the next session. Been supporting the other policy working group skills and engagement opportunities, which has been super fun. And I'm the one who's interviewing and hiring our new intern. So we've had an intern brought in through Lauren through OSU for the last several years, and we're moving that over to being housed over by OCFSN. And we've had an amazing slate of applicants, and it's been really exciting to see the really cool interest and skills that are coming in. So we're in the interview process right now. We're gonna have a really awesome person to support this group through the spring of 2024. So that's me. Should we popcorn it over?
Well, and just to clarify, I was going to bring up the intern before, but we have had an intern ever since 2020. In 2019, our Rare AmeriCorps, Lauren Johnson, did a lot of this work building out community food systems at the legislature with me. And then I have housed at OSU and paid from OSU as an OSU temporary employee, the intern since then. And now OSU will still pay for the intern, but we're moving the money to OCFSN, so OCFSN can house the intern. So it's a really great evolution in how we're doing this. So yes, let's go ahead with, I don't know if everybody, let's assume that not everybody was on. Rick and David, when you introduce yourself, let's just do name and organization. Rick, go ahead.
Rick Osborne, he, him pronouns, and Blue Ridge Strategies. I work with Oregon Coast Visitors Association and RDI.
Cool. Megan?
Megan Temple, she, her, Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network.
David?
Hey, David Whelans, he, him pronouns.
Partners for Hunger Free Oregon. If you didn't catch that, his mic is a little fuzzy because he's in a coffee shop. Amy?
Morning, everyone. Amy Wong, she, her, Oregon Organic Coalition.
Alice?
Hi, everybody. I'm Alice Morrison, Friends of Family Farmers, she, her pronouns.
Hannah, you're a new person in this group.
Yeah, I'm new, and I don't know if it makes sense for me to be here, but I'm wearing my community co-packing hat because there's some movement around sort of doing more maybe programming at the legislature. So I don't know if that fits with policy. All this is very new to me, but I'm going to be a fly on the wall and listen. So thanks.
Hannah, I read your proposal that you sent, or the info you sent to Andrew, and I have some thoughts for you that we can bring up a little later on this call or offline.
Sweet. Thank you, Lauren.
Nellie.
Hi, everybody. Nellie McAdams, she, her pronouns, and with Oregon Agricultural Trust.
Awesome. Rachel.
Hi, everybody. Rachel Ward, she, her, with Farmers Market Fund.
Mackenzie.
Good morning, y'all. Mackenzie, she, her pronouns, and I'm with Oregon Food Bank.
Rashay.
Hello, everyone. Rashay Burns, she, her pronouns, and I'm with Growing Gardens.
And Sammy.
Hey everyone, sorry if I sound like Squidward. I'm a little under the weather. My name is Sammy Teo, she, her pronouns, and I'm with Oregon Food Bank.
Just recently did that. Had actually a garden variety cold that wasn't COVID or anything. It was like an old school cold, and I was still like, why? So thanks everybody. And if you hopped on after I introduced myself, I'm Lauren Gwynn. I'm with Oregon State University, Center for Small Farms and Community Food Systems. And I am really passionate about our ability collectively to shift public policy to support the kind of food systems we want to see. And as I said before, this is a meeting to focus on what we have been doing every year since 2019, which is the Community Food Systems at the Legislature project. So you all are the starting working group for that. Oh, there's Erin Poplack joining. Hey, Erin, you want to just introduce name and organization?
Hi, folks. Aaron Poplack, he, him, his, and I'm with Food Corps. I'm an Impact and Partnership Lead.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron.
So one other person joins. Silkette.
Oh, Silkette. Silkette is from North Coast Food Web, I think.
Hi, yeah. Silkette Ra, North Coast Food Web, she, her pronouns. And yeah, this is my first meeting. So I'm interested and really excited.
Awesome. Thanks, Silkette. So Andrew, we can put the sort of plan. Some of you have seen this every year. We have a little working document where we lay out, okay, what does OCFSN do around public policy? Because we were very deliberately not founded as a statewide policy network. There are, around the country, statewide policy networks focused on food systems. OCFSN did not start as one of those because we don't just focus on public policy. And very early on, folks were worried that focusing on public policy could be really divisive. And over time, we have found that it is useful to share information about our different public policy priorities. It is possible to join in ad hoc coalitions before, during the legislature to move our different bills forward. It is also possible when our bills don't all naturally go together to talk about why that is and think about, oh, how do we show up at the legislature enough on the same page that there can't be a divide and conquer by other people who want to shut us down. I've really been impressed with gradually over the years how we've been doing that. And some of you may be saying, oh gosh, we still have to work on that. We definitely do, but we have made progress. There's another opportunity for us in how we do this. Well, there's also sharing out policy priorities with the rest of the network that may not think of themselves as policy people, but turns out it's really helpful for them to know about this. And then the last piece is really thinking about our work in the larger context in Oregon. Social justice, racial justice, health, housing, economy, environmental issues. These are other really big things that come up at the legislature, and it's super helpful for us to understand how do we fit in with our priorities. And when we talk about at OCFSN having a commitment to equity and inclusion, we have to practice that in our working groups. And that means sometimes it means thinking about the equity, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically the equity view on, I'm just having like old brain right now, but like how we think about our bills related to equity. What have we not thought about yet? Who is affected? Who has a voice? And then sometimes it means, actually, I'm going to look at what a different coalition is focused on, whether it's the Affordable Housing Alliance, or it's the Urban League of Portland, or it's the statewide NAACP, or it's a Healthier Oregon, the way they bring it. I mean, it's important for us, even as we focus on our own priorities within the food system, to see how we fit together in the big picture. In the same way that if you're working on farmland or farmer viability, for you to understand what's going on in the food access and anti-hunger work, we've been learning to do that over the years of being OCFSN. The bigger picture helps us situate our work more broadly and become more effective, I think, in longer term change. That's just my theory of change. Doing that work is difficult because it requires us to slow down, and we all have trouble slowing down. And you have to be eyes on the prize to get anything done at the legislature. So it's something that's part of the reason why we have an intern to help us with this. So I'm not going to go into all of the nuts and bolts of how we do this work, but many of you will be familiar with those nuts and bolts. We do it for short sessions, we do it for long sessions. And I know that folks are like, well, is anything going to come up in this short session? And Andrew's already been getting a big list of things that are going to come up at the short session. And it's also an opportunity for us to think more broadly about who's bringing what other issues. So that is what I wanted to put out there in terms of the why and the what. In terms of the how, well, in terms of who is supporting this, like I said, Andrew has been leading a process of bringing on an intern. We're really excited about the possibilities. Have quite a few candidates, and he's going to be interviewing a couple. Andrew is now the dedicated staff person from OCFSN who will be able to provide a certain amount of support. He's not doing everything, but he will be the staff point person. I will continue to be involved in an advisory way. And then there will be lots of things that all of you will support with in terms of gathering information and helping design our outreach to the rest of the network. And there's a lot of different things that we do. So I want to stop there and I want to ask, Andrew, is there anything that I'm missing that we said we would share today?
Right on the money.
Okay.
This might be a good moment for questions on that stuff.
I was going to ask for questions knowing that the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to move into what are your member updates related to the Oregon legislature, including anything that's happened with bills or administrative rulemaking or any of those processes since the gavel went down on the last legislature. So we are going to shift into that, but let's take a few minutes. Does anyone have immediate questions about everything I just said? Great, thanks, Hannah. I think I also really want to say, this is written down in many places, but I want to say out loud, this working group always is, I won't even say a balance, it's a flow back and forth between, if you're going to work at the legislature, there's a certain amount of background, information, expertise, skill, knowledge that really helps you do that effectively as an organization or as groups of organizations. And it can sometimes be like, okay, this is like the strategy team and there's so much detail. And that's really important because that's how you move things. You have to have that expertise and that skill to be able to work in the legislature and around the legislature. At the same time, we want to find all ways as possible to be bringing along and bringing back to the rest of the network that may not be dedicated in this way, but really, I believe it's beneficial for the rest of our network to understand what things happen at the legislature that affect the challenges and opportunities that we see in food systems. And so I'm not going to go into the whole thing right now, Hannah, but when Hannah brings, hey, I've been doing this research with Oregon Department of Agriculture, and we see some opportunities for some public investment in a set of community co-packers, how does that translate into allocation of public dollars? There's a long road to that. There's a good brainstorming to happen to figure out who you're talking to, how it fits with other types of appropriations. And so, Hannah, there's a great group of people here who know how to take concepts like that and turn it into a real thing. And so I would say that we're trying to make this a place where people who aren't already experts can come, and then making sure we're going back to our network to hear what they have to say. I know I use a lot of words to try to say what I hope is a simple thing, but it's not a simple thing. It's complicated. I've stunned them, Andrew. So let's move into member updates and legislative session priorities. You want to lead this part, Andrew?
Yeah. So let's just, I'm just going to let's go backwards up through the Zoom, and I can kind of facilitate this. We have got about 40 minutes in this call, so let's try to keep it pretty, you can go into detail, but kind of your top level items that you want to share with this group. And remember, this is another thing, this is recorded. This isn't necessarily a place for like internal like strategy. You don't want the broader network to see, or folks who are tracking this stuff. So, we can have a conversation about how we do that as we get closer to, if there's just like sensitive topics that want to be discussed, but this is more of a general sharing. So Aaron, do you have updates from the 2023 session or 2024 session priorities you want to share with the group?
Hey, folks. No, food court doesn't have any priorities that we are, actively leading or moving on. Looking forward to working with Partners for Hunger-Free Oregon and others on any school meals work that will move in the short session. But right now, doing more thinking about 2025, and so showing up to listen, hear what others' priorities are, and understand if there is a support role that is needed around any school meals, food, or garden education work in the short session.
Great. Sammy. We can come back to Sammy Silket.
I don't really have any updates. We're just working on some kind of strategic planning and goal planning as an organization for 2024, and realizing that we don't really have a hand in anything political, and we would, kind of need to up our representation in that front. And so I'm just trying to join working groups and come to learn, and that's where we're at right now. So
Awesome. Great. Rashay.
Sorry about that. We are working towards building new things around public health and gardening. And so just kind of hearing what is going on regarded to health and wellness related to food and food access and insecurity. And then thinking about like, how can we tap into that work and change hearts and minds around gardening being something that should be public health or should be put in the bigger eye. Around as we talk about food systems and networks, and thinking of the individual and community levels. But we haven't gotten, as far as I know, we haven't gotten deeply into legislation. So I'm just here to kind of glean, understand, and learn today.
Great. Mackenzie.
Yeah, and I'll ask Sammy to help fill in some gaps here, but I think the biggest update that we have is around Food for All Oregonians. In the last legislative session, Food for All did not pass, but that does not mean that the campaign is over. I think our steering committee is coming together to kind of evaluate last session and figure out what next steps are for that. So that's kind of where we are right now, but we hope Food for All will come back in the future. And Sammy, feel free to add anything that I missed here, but just keep the big update.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Yeah, I think we are also, I think Matt from our policy team is also going to be working with David from Hunger Free on school meals, and then other just issues related to the root causes of hunger, like some housing justice work, some environmental justice, hopefully some immigrant justice work as well, but really having like school meals and then Food for All 2025 at the forefront.
I want to just pop in here to say that I think this last session, we know that the walkout and all those delays did lead to a lot of important things not passing. And I'm also really curious what kind of intel you've been able to gather about, was that actually the cause, or was it an excuse? And really there were folks who didn't want to see certain things pass, but they could blame it on the delay rather than looking bad. I think that that's the post-game analysis. And I'm really interested on Food for All Oregonians. Like, what are the blocks that may come up again, even if there's no delay, and how do we get out in front? And you all are the ones who are figuring that out. I'm just curious when you figure something out. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it was a mix of a bunch of things. I wasn't really leading on Food for All. I will be leading with Matt in 2025, but from what I understand, I think it was like a mix of the delay plus questions about funding and figuring that out. But I kind of felt like everyone kind of wanted to pass. Like I didn't feel like there was any Dems that was like trying not to get food for all passed. I think everyone was like, I agree with this in principle, and then there were other issues around it too.
Awesome. Let's see here. Rachel.
Yeah, the Double Up Food Book Coalition is exploring a short session ask, probably around 1 million is what we're shooting for, since we just got like an inflation increase from what we had in the past, and it's not quite enough to really stretch and continue to grow and expand the program, but we're just pulling together kind of talking points and budgets and things like that for that. So not any real like conversations happening so far.
Nelly.
So I'll wear two hats, one being Oregon Ag Heritage, well, Oregon Agricultural Trust's main priority is Oregon Ag Heritage Program. So grants for farmland protection, passing it on to future generations, be they family members or not, and conservation work. We didn't get funding in 2024, that's 2023, but we're going for the same amount of funding in 2024. And this is just going to be a simple Ways and Means funding request. We've been having good conversations with especially the legislator who was opposed to that funding in the last legislative session. And while it'll never be her top priority, she's not opposed to it. So we're taking that as a good sign. And Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board plans to run 2 separate grants, and we have 14 projects in the hopper that would protect about 19,000 acres. So a lot of good work could be done. The second, I'll wear my 1,000 Friends of Oregon board member hat. There was a really terrible bill that was it failed by 1 vote on the very last day of the legislature last year. That was House Bill 3414, which would have allowed every city, regardless of whether there was a need for it, to expand by 75 to 150 acres. They said that the reason was for affordable housing, but housing built on the edges of cities is usually really expensive, takes up peri-urban farmland, terrible for carbon footprint, etc. And there are more than enough buildable units within urban growth boundaries. Really, the limitation is infrastructure funding and removing red tape. So the governor has been really pushing for this, with home builders whispering in her ear or yelling in her ear. That would have taken up to 18,000 acres of peri-urban farmland and other lands without a demonstrated need. So something very similar will happen in 2024, and probably as long as Kotek is governor, unless she is convinced that more land isn't the limiting factor and that we need to actually invest in affordable housing instead. And so really with 1,000 Friends and other conservation groups, we're trying to rally all the troops in 2024 to make sure that this does not happen again. So I'll just keep y'all posted on that.
Nelly, that seems like it's that issue just comes up and up and up and up and up. I mean, as long as I've been in Oregon, I feel like it's gotten way more heated, obviously, in recent years, but that pitting of affordable housing against farmland. And, we can say, like, all the things you just listed, right, this is completely cynical. This is not for affordable housing. This is not affordable housing exists within a larger context of services and connection to what you need. It's not just about a house. And is it a matter of, yes, all of that's been clearly stated out there. There's lots of different briefers, and like the Oregon Housing Alliance is clear about that. Like, it's just that the home builders are so powerful that they can get the legislators to just ignore the clear communication.
Land use has always been a bargaining chip, and the governor's always taken the bait on that because she doesn't care that much. So it's important, I think, for constituents to explain that we can have housing and protect farmland at the same time. And I think it's also important to be pointing to the loss of public resources as we're providing infrastructure on new broken ground rather than investing in.
Mm.
And also to be pointing to the fact that the only one who benefits from sprawl are developers. Cheaper land is better for their margins. That is the only reason why this is happening. And, you know, we don't want to look like the Central Valley. Like we have the only reason we have farmland in the Willamette Valley is because of the land use program. But I think a lot of legislators don't fully understand that or think, well, it's just a one-time thing. But, you know, things that we love are destroyed one at a time. Hannah?
Hey, Nellie, this is like this is more personal what I'm going to share, but I'm have been for a long time working with community people, you know, just like people I know that would really love to live in community on farmland. And I wonder if there's like a way to like weave that into this work, because I've always thought that it would need to be something that was taken to the legislature. And it's, you know, living on a farm, you know, it's like so much work. We need, you know, 2 or 3 more, you know, people or families to like help with the effort. So there's less waste. There's more access to living on land. I mean, there's just so many, there's, you know, I was talking to Outgrowing Hunger and the perspective of like, you know, immigrant farmers wanting to live in community on farmland. And so I feel like that's a really cool, like weave to, we need housing, but how do we actually create that opportunity on farmland so that people can actually farm and access farming in new generations? Because we, you know, so many people don't actually want to go be farmers full time or care for our land unless they have a community support for their kids, like all of that. Is that something you've ever explored or considered in this work?
Yeah, I mean, that comes up quite often. I think it's important to recognize that after this generation of folks living on that land are no longer there, that will just be a cluster of homes that a developer will probably buy. And, you know, the more low density development that we have, the more likely that land is going to become high density development. So I think it's just something to be really cautious of. You know, in many countries, people do not live on farmland because that land is rare and special and precious. And many people commute to their farms like they would commute to any other job. So, you know, it's possible to have community that is not specifically on the land and to still have that relationship with land. So I just want to like open folks' minds to other ways of working the land too, that takes kind of future fragmentation into account, because the more that land is fragmented, the more that it will become fragmented. And there are many more homes already on farmland than there are farms. One of the problems is that many of those homes are expensive mini mansions, or they're used for short-term rentals or for other reasons that are out of the leasing or ownership market. So like those are considerations to take into account. But I would like for this conversation to include long-term consequences of more homes on farmland as well, because it does result in land being taken out of production.
I'd love to have a maybe more going
Yeah, I
conversation.
don't think we're gonna
Not
go
here,
into a little bit more detail here on this.
Yeah, and this is something that
every year.
every year. And so I just put something in the chat. Let's follow up so I can get caught up in what has happened and how we bring this back.
Great.
Andrew, who's next?
We've got Alice. I'm taking notes, so I'm not reading the chat. Sorry, folks, so I can follow up on that. But if there's something important, yeah.
No, it's all good.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alice from Friends of Family Farmers. I'm going to start with briefly talking about follow-up from the 2023 session, because we are currently in the last few days of the comment period for rulemaking on SB 507, which is the Farm Direct Enhancements bill that was passed last year. Or not last, I keep saying last year, but the session was only a few months ago. Sorry. It feels like a whole different world. But so that has been a long journey, and we've been very actively engaged in the rulemaking process and sat on the Rule Advisory Committee and have met with ODA several times, and the OSU and the OHA folks and all of those things. There are some things in the rulemaking that are slightly different than the legislative intent, is what I will say. But so there were a lot of robust conversations had around that, and I would be more than happy to send folks more information, our analysis of the rulemaking and what we think is coming next. But that rulemaking period or the comment period on the draft rules is coming to a close on Friday. So if you have engaged on the Farm Direct issue and want to get your last say in, please do submit those comments to ODA, to Aaron Lockett at ODA by Friday. And then the other big thing that FOF worked on in 2023 was SB 85, the limitations on industrial agriculture and new regulations around the CAFO program. And sorry, my dogs see a FedEx truck and they won't stop barking. But that program they're still in development of the draft rules. They have not yet convened a rule advisory committee on SB 85. But we have discussed it at the quarterly CAFO advisory committee meetings for the last 6 months, and been in constant communication with them, and have made it very, very clear that folks from our coalition would like to be present in that rulemaking advisory committee, and have been told that we will be. So just waiting on invitations and scheduling on that side. Exciting stuff in terms of water quantity limitations for the stock water exemption above 12,000 gallons a day, such and such. And happy to talk more about that off this call if folks are interested in what's going on with that process. Then in the 2023 session, FOF's number one priority is finding a livable solution that prioritizes specialty seed production in the Willamette Valley Protected District. Last session, SB 789, regarding the Willamette Valley Protected District and canola and specialty seed, was passed with a pretty major amendment that just pushed the sunset out 1 year. So we're in the exact same position that we were in 2023's session for 2024. We just have less time to talk about it in a short session. So FOF has been working very closely with the Organic Coalition. You'll hear from Amy as well, and other people in the space, and getting our farmers involved. There was a work group over the summer that Amy was on, as well as our board member and seed farmer Hank Keogh from Avoca Seeds, and Sarah Klieger from Adaptive, and some canola growers. And that this issue is going to be very, very contentious. There will be a committee bill in the House Ag Committee, and because of the makeup of that committee, there is going to be some hard battles about this. And we are putting all of our lobbying efforts toward this bill. So I see your question in the chat: who ultimately has more power, or are there gaps in knowledge that still need to be filled? There are a lot of gaps in knowledge in the rank and file members, and that's something that we've been focusing on in our lobby. We work with Mahonia Public Affairs. If you ever get an email from Taylor Sarman or Heather Rockwell at Mahonia, that's FOF's lobby representation. And they have been really hitting the ground running and having a lot of meetings. They scheduled me 18 meetings in one day during legislative days. So we've been there doing the thing. And we've been doing a lot of education, as well as a lot of discussion within the House Agriculture Committee, because of the work group, that is where they are feeling ownership of, and Helm has committed a committee bill to it. So we're trying to work out what other pathways there might be, if there are any, if this is the only pathway, how we are going to move forward. There are a lot of gaps in understanding of this issue, because it is a pretty, seed genetics are not as readily apparent to everyone in the world as some other issues within agriculture are. There are special considerations in this part of the farming community, and it's one of the smaller farming communities, but one of the most profitable on small acreage options here in the Valley. So it really helps small producers have a viable living, and we are one of the only regions in the world that can still grow the specialty brassica seed varieties that we do. Over 90% of the seed stock of some varieties of brassica are grown in the Willamette Valley and nowhere else. So Helm has committed a committee bill to this issue. We don't know what's in it yet, and he has said that he's going to be reconvening stakeholders after the November legislative days to continue discussion. So the work group that ODA hosted highlighted differences and had very little consensus. You can read the report on the website, but it did not have a policy solution come out of it. So it is difficult. And there are things, because this is a forum that is recorded and I'm a member of the Capital Club, there are certain things that I cannot say in this moment. So just wanted to highlight that I will be more forthcoming in other venues if folks would like to talk about the certain personalities at play and what's going on with that. But we are doing our utmost along with, and Amy will speak about this as well, but Amy and I and our other stakeholders are doing our utmost to educate and continue to bring people out to farms. We hosted a seed farm legislator tour back at the end of September, and we are continuing to do that work to connect folks with their legislators, especially in the protected district. There are also other protected districts around the state. I know I'm talking a lot. I need to move on, but
no, you're good. This is important. You're good.
There are other protected districts around the state, especially the Central Oregon Protected District, that action in the Willamette Valley Protected District will influence. So there's already been an attempt by ODA. There was an informational meeting in that community about dissolving the Central Oregon Protected District, which would be very damaging considering all of the like First Nations and Native seed preservation that's going on in that area. And like that would be very, the thing that is the hardest about this issue is that when we talk about canola is a brassica, and it is a very pernicious crosser with, there is a diagram created by Dr. Jim Myers about which species cross the most. And see these big red lines? Those are the crossiest species and they interact so much. And Rapa and Napus are the most common canola species. And they are the crossiest of the crossy. So they cross out of their blocks very easily. They also seed bank in roadsides and everything very easily. So once we've passed a point of no return, which we actually don't know where it is, we'll only know when we cross it because of how plant genetics work. We cannot put this cat back in the bag. So we are doing a little bit of, we're trying to stop the spread of pernicious genes that could ruin our ability to grow vegetable specialty, according to USDA, but vegetable seed that feeds millions of people around the globe. And it's a choice between only being able to grow canola in the valley and being able to grow these hundreds of other varieties of brassica seed that feed people every day. So it's definitely a balancing act. We have a lot of resources on our website. There's also protectwhatsgood.com that OOC and FOF contributed to that as well. So the GMO issue is something that will come up. It's already been in the public record. I'm not afraid to talk about it. But right now, there is no GMO canola in the valley because the oil pressing plant in Rickreall that was the destination for all the canola grown here was not accepting GMO canola. That plant has since closed, and now people have to truck it up to southern Washington. That plant does accept GMO canola. So even though there hasn't been any GMO canola in the valley, the incentive to remain GMO free has been removed. And so there is a very real possibility that GMO canola will start to be grown in the valley. And that threatens our ability to grow any organic brassica seed in this environment, as well as all of the folks on the conventional ag side who grow brassica seed like turnip and radish and all of that for overseas markets who do not allow any genetic engineering in their material. So if like you were growing radish seed for Japan, they don't allow genetic engineering in their material. So you would just lose that contract and you would not be able to sell into that market anymore. So that's something that has been brought up in the conversation, and offline we can talk more about that. That is FOF's. It's an economic issue. It's a biodiversity issue. It's a like food security issue, in my opinion, also, because these seeds do grow an enormous amount of food, not only here in Oregon, but around the globe. And Amy can talk more about this as well. And we would love to talk with folks. We're hosting a legislator only lunch and learn webinar info session on the science of this topic on November 13th. So we're continuing our legislator education efforts. We had a lunch and learn on this topic for the public last month, I believe. It's recorded on FOP's website if you'd like to watch the video. And that's where the majority of our lobbying efforts are going, but we're also very proud and happy to support our partners in legislation that helps our farmers as well. We are definitely showing up and going to bat for Double Up Food Bucks and the Oregon Ag Heritage Program and all of those good things that we're on the record supporting for many years now. And also in our lunch and learn yesterday, we had Ken Helm speak about the disaster resilience funding that OCFSN is working on getting out to farmers. And he specifically mentioned on the recording that he is planning on bringing a proposal forward to fund the Oregon Ag Heritage Program through his committee as well. So there's lots of support there, and I think we can do something good. So that's great. And yeah, and we are in the information gathering phase for what other things we can, activate our people to support. We're also starting our biennial policy creation process in January. So every 2 years, FOF does a giant survey and a series of focus groups, both internally and sponsored focus groups at other culturally specific and BIPOC-led organizations around the state. And that is the data that we use to determine our policy priorities for the next biennium. So we're going to start that process in January. And when you see that come out, if you want your group to engage in policy creation, it's a great way to tap into an existing process, and we'd be more than happy to talk to any of your members or explain the process or help people along in that if they would like to participate and possibly get something written up for the long session, because long session priorities have to be settled and found champions for by about September of next year. So yeah, that was a lot. I will pass it on.
You want to add onto that, Amy?
Sure. Alice did a great job. I will say the work group was, a lot of work over a summer, and we didn't get a lot of notice. A lot of people had to shift a lot of plans around for it. And I would just add that actually Dr. Myers has researched that because canola is such a prodigious crosser, as Alice said, that even in non-GMO canola, there is advantageous presence. That's what they call the presence of genetically engineered material in all canola. And I can't remember the exact number, but so even though there technically isn't non-GMO canola allowed currently, there always is some in there, and there have been people who have said that there's fields that have been sprayed out that still have canola in them. So it is actually probably there. So again, this has always been about risk mitigation, and it's mostly from genetically engineered canola is the risk, especially to organic seed growers, but even conventional, as Alice said. So it's a real uphill battle, and I think a piece that wasn't brought up today is because a legislator on the House Ag Committee has long been a proponent for canola and has been able to really control the narrative, and unfortunately has maybe not understood the issue and has allowed erroneous things to proliferate. So we have a really big uphill battle. And unfortunately, it's really hard. And we do have Senate support, but currently, because Helm is taking such ownership over this issue, legislators don't want to get into step on each other's toes. And in essence, I'm concerned that Helm is potentially waiting too long. We're definitely unlikely to be able to find a legislator at this late date to run another bill. So then we're going to be stuck dealing with whatever we get from Rep. Helm. So that's problematic, especially since there was this big rush to do the work group over the summer. We had a hearing in the September legislative days, and then nothing has happened. And Helm says that he's going to be reconvening a work group after the November legislative days. So we're in a wait and see position. We put forward viable options. The seed stakeholders in the work group put together viable options at the end of the work group, and we have not gotten a response from the canola growers nor Rep. Helm, and it's their turn to say what they want to do. If they're not happy with the options we presented, they should put a solution forth, but they have not yet. So yeah, this issue continues to be incredibly stressful. And we will also be working on it with our lobby team. We also will be working on, last session, we had been told that we had an organic policy specialist at ODA and it disappeared at the last minute. So we'll be trying to secure that this session. And we are also still, will be doing a lot of work in the follow-up to one of our legislative wins last session too, which was permanent funding for 5 organic extension agents, which are helping all farmers with low input and environmental practices, making sure that those positions are filled in a way that truly supports the industry. So that's ongoing work we've been doing this summer, and we'll be keeping doing that work. And then, of course, supporting many of the priorities we've long supported in this network. So please feel free to reach out for with any questions at any time. Many thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. I got yours, David, in the chat. Megan.
Oregon Climate Network is focused right now on implementation of the Natural Climate Solutions Bill, which passed last session, and making sure that the Natural Climate Solutions Fund, which provides $10 million in technical assistance and financial incentives for natural and working lands, including farmers and ranchers, is rolled out in a way that is equitable and accessible and works for farmers and ranchers on the ground. We'll have info sessions and opportunities for folks to learn more about that as we know more about what the state is thinking. We're monitoring that process pretty closely. And then we do not have any of our own legislative, we're not championing any bills during the short session. We will be supporting the Oregon Ag Heritage Program campaign as we are requested by that campaign. That's it for ORCAN.
Rick.
Good morning again. Yeah, we for Oregon Coast Visitors Association, we in the last session just had a bill passed for the allocated $1.19 million to increasing local seafood production so that we can keep more of it local. We did a study with some economists that found that about 90% of the seafood in our local stores and restaurants on the Oregon coast isn't from Oregon, which is hitting us not just from a tourism perspective, but the organization is truly interested in the public health, the environmental aspects, and all of those things as they pertain to that. Like, we're literally flying fish in past fish that we're sending out in order to sell it locally. And it just doesn't make any sense for food security or any of those purposes. So we did secure some money. We're waiting for that right now to get through the DAS DOJ process. And we don't have anything coming up this session that we're specifically proposing, but we are open to opportunities to support compatible legislation from groups that that share our values. Like this is a local food group, right? So this I'm here partially too to look for those opportunities if we can help out in other ways, kind of build some partnerships and be of assistance to you all. So that's kind of where we're at for the short session. For the longer session, we may be looking at some things like asking for maybe some more assistance in the terms of resources for workforce development in that local seafood processing space, and possibly some other aspects, but we're still kind of talking through that right now. Obviously, we've got till next year to kind of get things ironed out, but those conversations have begun on our end.
Amazing.
Hey, Rick, do you have a one-pager that explains how that funding is going to be used? Because we know that there's some folks on the coast working on seafood who have been asking our regional food business center about support. And so it would be great to know what's already in play. In terms of
I can send that over to you. If you put your email or is your email on the list, I can
I'll just
I
put
can
it in
send
the
it over
chat
to you.
just in case
I
you
don't
didn't.
have problem sharing it with the whole group. It's still, I just have to dig it out.
Great, super helpful. Well, that was an awesome go round, and we are close to at the hour. Andrew and I, and as soon as the intern is on board, we'll think about next steps in terms of when we get this gang back together. You know, the kind of conversations we just had were a great mix of specific updates and also, wow, this is a big problem trying to dig into it. And we go back and forth with that too. And we have the ability to do that at different times with different energy with different people. So we'll keep looking for those opportunities. And I think for now, I just would like you all to consider who is not in this room related to some priorities related to community food systems and the breadth of that. I mean, clearly from these conversations, we are working across different parts of the food system, but let's make sure that we're not missing anyone or any other organizations. Like, for example, we have been tracking what the Farm Workers Union has been doing at the legislature. I don't know if they have anything coming up in the short session or if there's any updates on past bills and how they've played out. And we don't have to answer this now. You know, I'm curious if there's anything going on with restaurants and retail, if anything might happen at the legislature related to that. So we don't have to figure that out now. I'm just putting a mark in. Who else do we need to hear from in our community food systems related work? Alice.
I just wanted to also pose the possibility of having, I know that like we already have 2 policy working groups, but I think last session and the session before, we have had a lobby table that was convened by Christine at the American Heart Association to talk about food system issues in in the building and very nitty gritty and not publicly available kind of way. And I know that that's a different space than this, but I do think that there is a lot of value to that, and it wouldn't be closed, but it also would be very fast paced and about what's going on in the building at the moment and how we can help each other advance our priorities. We have to do outside baseball and inside baseball in order for this to work. Is anybody interested in having that inside baseball conversation during the active session? And would you FOF could convene the table? It's just about setting up a Zoom room. We wouldn't need to be leading it, but just wanted to throw that out there and say that I'm willing to make that space if folks want it.
I think Alice, just go ahead and organize that since you've done it in the past. And you can ask this group. And I think what would be really helpful is, since you're not asking OCFSN staff or an intern to organize that, I think it would just be helpful for you and others to clarify what's going to count as inside baseball and then what can count as outside baseball, so that folks who are not part of that group, and, you know, for a good reason, know, wait a minute, what's happening in that room and what can I hear about? Like, making clear what happens in the 2 different spaces, I think will help everybody else not feel left behind or confused. There's very, very important reasons to do in the inside baseball that you're talking about. And I think we just have to clarify why that is. Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, it's 10 o'clock. Thank you all for showing up. Thank you for being part of this. Thank you, Andrew. And we'll go from there, here, and everywhere.
Thanks, y'all. See you later.